Is a label as important as it used to be? It can be dramatically effective in the case of Jackson Dean, where you're ready for it. You truly are ready for the spotlight and for that moment and can capture it and do something with it. In the case of a lot of these kids on TikTok, maybe a label's not the right thing for them, where they should continue to develop their craft. I can never say yes to a final version of a song that we are writing and producing until I hear it in my truck. A lot of times, it takes one or two cars to hear it in to just understand how it's going to be consumed by the end user. So I'll listen to it in my truck and then maybe Dustin's car to just get a sense of how does it sound, because that is the final litmus test for me. It never passes go until we listen to it in at least one, if not two different cars.
I learned to play guitar because in junior high at Calvary Chapel, the only thing that girls were more interested in than sports were guys that played guitar and led worship. So I started learning to play guitar so I could lead worship. So Sleep Without You, I'm grateful. It's a song about my parents. My dad could never sleep when my mom was away for like a women's retreat at the church. It was really cute, I thought. And so I had an idea to write that song. And it was my first #1, so I'm grateful to that song. But in case you didn't know, made my whole career.
Hey everybody, I'm Matt Freedman, and this is Cars and Culture with Jason Stein.
What a pleasure to have what I consider to be incredible talent in the music industry. He is a CMA artist. We're going to talk about some of the fun things that he's done over the course of the last year or so, and including what he's doing now on the business side. But Matt, what a pleasure. Welcome to the program.
Jason, it's my pleasure and privilege to now call you a friend, having met in person and hung out for a long weekend in the Florida Keys. So thank you for having me, brother. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. We had one of our former guests. You have a strong connection to him, and I know you were particularly interested when we first started talking late last year. Brett Young, you have been in and around his world and a whole bunch of other worlds. I know you listened to the interview and appreciated some of Brett's story that's actually similar to yours too.
It is.
You guys have a good connection, right?
We had opened for Brett at a festival maybe 4 or 5 years ago. I was always a really big fan of his music and also the parallels in his story, being a pitcher, playing baseball, injury, picking up a guitar to sort of get through it, and then, just grinding through this industry to find his way. And he's always been a big inspiration to me. He's a West Coast guy, sort of has that laid back, soulful, sort of thing. He's sort of someone I've always looked up to in the industry as someone that, to me, had done it right from a brand perspective. His music was great. It was authentic, but he never tried too hard to fit in with the Nashville thing. He was always very authentically him, which I always thought was really cool. So yeah, I saw the interview. I've been a huge fan of his and looked up to him for many years. So
you've been in and around so many interesting people. I want to talk about the music first, and then we'll get into the business side.
Sure.
I mean, Miranda Lambert, Brantley Gilbert, Brett, Chris Young. You're going to be supporting a whole bunch of other folks this summer. Barefoot Country Music Festival, Carolina Country Music Festival. What's that like being in and around those worlds? I mean, the people that I've just rattled off are, I mean, the who's who of music today in country music. What's that been like for you?
It was never my intention to be in this realm. Like, I never did it to seek the approval or I guess the validation of all those people. They're just people that I look up to, and I know that have not gotten there by anything other than talent and hard work. So if for nothing else, the relationships that we've built and just being sort of in this world it's been a trip, if I'm being honest with you. I very much have imposter syndrome every day that I wake up, and I just get to do what I do. So yes, we've been sort of, on festival stages and opening acts and sort of in these circles. I just look at it like we idolize these folks just for the work that we know that they put in to get where they are. Because it doesn't happen by accident. You can be the most talented person, but talent's only going to get you so far, as you know. they had to work their ass off and earn every bit of what they have. So that's the mindset that we have.
It's a classic story. We've talked about it on this program before, but it's the overnight sensation that takes a decade to be overnight, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Like I'm sure every one of them can tell you, I've been doing this since I was 17 years old, and I'm an old man, but not to give anything away, that makes it 22, 23 years for me. As a songwriter, a performer, starting in garage bands. So yeah, any bit of success that we're having now or have had over the past few years, I don't I love this quote that like if you really focus on the journey, you never truly arrive. And I'm a big believer in that. I'm in love with the process. I'm in love with the relationships. I love the songwriting component. I just enjoy it too much to ever feel like there's another plateau that we need to hit to define success. To me, every day that we're in the game is the success, if that makes sense.
It does. It does. And your journey, you just alluded to it. 17 years old. You were a trumpet player. Is that right? In a jazz band?
That must have come out over a couple drinks when we were in the Keys.
In
But yes,
school plays and doing things like this. And then we're talking about Brett Young and Miranda Lambert. I mean, it was it ever really the goal?
that's a good question. Yes, I was a trumpet player. I met, when we were in middle school, you met Dustin and hung out with him all
Yeah.
weekend. Dustin Napoli, who's been my sideman, guitar player, co-writer in a lot of instances, and really my business partner through this whole process. And we met when we were in middle school. And never once did we ever say we want to set out for fame or world tours or anything like that. The goal for us was always let's write the best song that we can possibly write. And if we're going to do covers or play, weddings, corporate events, whatever it is, we just want to deliver something that's so authentically enjoyable from the song to the delivery, the preparation that if we want to hit people on every single emotion that they have in a night. It's their night, it's their show, it's their time. We just want to make sure that we're reciprocating all the energy that they're giving to us. And that's all we ever set out to do. So stages, have gotten bigger over the years. We've been very fortunate, but there's a lot of times, very honestly, that I get equal amount of enjoyment sitting with a veteran and writing their story one-on-one as I do playing, Barefoot Country Music Festival on a stage in front of 13, 15,000 people. So as long as there's that equal exchange of energy and emotion going back and forth, that's what I'm seeking. So
You, yeah, and the music industry, I mean, you have to find enjoyment in that way. And I want to talk for a minute about the business of music. You and I have talked about this separately. It's a hard business, isn't it? And it's increasingly harder. We talked to Brett about it on this program. A few years ago, talked to Guy Berryman about it from Coldplay. It is nothing like what it used to be in terms of create a bunch of music, write a bunch of songs, sell some records, CDs, go on tour. And the whole business model's been flipped on its head, hasn't it? What have you seen in the last 20 plus years that's changed? And we could probably spend the whole program on that, but
you're
what's your
right.
view? Yeah.
You're right. It's when we were first starting out, you were correct. We were printing CDs, mixtapes, and
Yeah.
just writing our name on them, giving them out to people at shows. The music industry over the past 5 years has changed probably more so than it has in the last 20 because streaming became a thing. You're effectively if you're looking at music as a manufacturing industry, you're going direct to consumer now. And a lot of times there were these middleman distributors that you had to pay the piper to, you know, a label or, a marketing team to help promote your music for you. All of that has been eroded with the advent of music now being primarily distributed through social media and streaming platforms. So even right now, the hardest thing to do is develop a really authentically engaged fan base and understand who they are and give them what they want. It's really easy to do because it's easy to find those people where before you had to hand them something physical and you may never see or hear from them again.
Yeah.
Now at least you have a general sense of where they are, who those people are, But if you look at it like you're running a business from a marketing perspective, until you really understand from an email address or a personal relationship, a phone number, that exchange really goes a long way now because you can monetize that relationship, where you can say, hey, we could play a party in your backyard. You can request to have us come to your city to play a show. There's other ways that we can actually build a business around one person now, which is different than before. So, but there's also, if you're in Nashville and you're starting up your career, first of all, the amount of talent there is just it's astronomical. Every bartender, every waiter, every server is going to have the most incredible voice and story you've ever heard in your life. So what do you have to do to stand out at that point? And to me, what our secret weapon has always been is I always sought to just be the nicest guy in the industry. Truthfully, like I did my entire playbook away for free. People ask all the time, how'd you do this? Get this release out, get on this stage. I am an open book, man. I am truly of the abundance mindset. I will tell you everything I don't care. I want to see everybody win. I don't look at it as competition for me. I just, I like being in the game. I
Yeah.
love this industry and love what I do so much. I truly just want to help other people. And I think that's served us really well because it's different. Everyone feels like it's this, like highly competitive, dog eat dog world. It doesn't have to be that. You can define your own success and go chase it while not having to steal it from somebody else. So it's maybe a different approach, but that's how we've kind of looked at it.
Is it almost a little easier now? And I say that not tongue in cheek, but if you had to hand those cassettes to individuals, hope they listen to them, hope they pass them along and make the magic happen there. If you have a great, yeah, and I know you're on the marketing side too. If you have a great approach to the market and you see it with influencers all the time, isn't it a little easier to connect with audiences? Isn't it easier to build a bigger fan base? Isn't it easier to become an overnight sensation that doesn't take 20 years?
100%. It's never been easier. And that probably goes for building any startup right now. It doesn't have to be music. It could be you as a influencer, a content creator, anything in that creative realm. You can have something to offer, build your offer, serve it to the internet, and become wildly successful very quickly going direct to consumer because all the other nonsense is cut out. Because you own your own distribution channel through social media, where before that was a label, it was, a publisher, a distribution company. Now you are in control of your own destiny. It truly is how much do you have to put towards it to run it like a business, and how smart can you be as a marketer to reach those people and keep them engaged.
When you look at someone like, Jelly Roll, who has gone from an incredibly hard upbringing and past to being the overnight sensation based on a certain persona and based on a certain style. And obviously now he's got hooks and lyrics and songs, song writers probably beating down his door. What do you think? I mean, what's your impression of that? Is he just finding his own path, and is that chance and hard work, or is it luck, or what is that in the music industry?
It's a one in a million combination of all those things. It's
Yeah.
the right story, the right voice, the right time, the right label exec who's seeking something like that. I'll give you an example that a story that of someone that we know, who's sort of in our flock, that I am the biggest fan in the world of. Some of your listeners may have heard of this kid, some may not. His name is Jackson Dean.
Mm-hmm.
Um, his drummer Sean, shout out to Sean Mercer, has become a really good friend of ours in the industry. Sean is an incredible producer, drummer, drums for Jackson Dean and their band. And he shot some video for us and produced a lot of our stuff a couple years back. But here's a perfect example of how Nashville can work in a really positive way. You have a kid from Maryland who is just a studio rat who is showing up 16, 17 years old, just hanging out with a guitar, picking it, learning from others, not even just like with recording time, just being in the studio, listening to others. Parents would drop him off there. And eventually, he was also a football player in high school. So he had a video go viral how he got his big break. He played the national anthem for a football game with his guitar in his shoulder pads and his uniform.
Hmm.
And the video went viral because it was a great rendition of it, but he was also in his uniform at 18 years old. So the combination of like the grit plus that viral moment, plus he's actually like an insane talent. I mean, songwriter, vocal delivery. So all the way up to Scott Borchetta, signed him.
CEO. Hmm.
When he was probably 20 years old, to a record deal. And, he's toured with Lainey Wilson. He's toured with everybody at this point. Blake Shelton last year. He's out on his own headlining tour now. But that's like an example of how it should work. But for every one of him, you probably have 10,000 that are on the bench in Nashville, in Broadway, doing the songwriter rounds, playing the bars for, $50 and a cheeseburger. And there's nothing wrong with that. But you have to have elite talent, elite grit, elite like wisdom of how business works, a viral moment, right time with Scott Borchetta at the right moment to catch his attention, go into that room for an audition and deliver it. And then they're going to make a bet on you as their bank. And then they'll say, hey, we'll get you on these tours and fund it. But it's it is the most competitive industry probably of anything right now.
In fact, signed by Big Machine Records, which was one of the first to sign. I think Taylor Swift was on Big Machine for a while too.
Exactly right.
Yeah, incredible. How much does a record label matter anymore?
Wow, that's a great question.
Because that was always the goal, right? I mean, you always wanted to be picked up by the label, by the big machines of the world, and then they could do all of the work for you. But I don't know. What does it matter?
It's a great question, and Jelly Roll, actually, to your point, does an incredible job of breaking down what it's called a 360 deal and how the labels sort of provide a bank to you as a resource and can get you all the, plugged into the right tours and the right marketing and distribution. And but effectively, what their goal is to recoup as much of that money that you're going to earn for them, sometimes like 70 cents on the dollar, 80 cents on the dollar, sometimes 100 cents on the dollar. And before you get a check, they're going to make sure that they're whole and then some. So what you're seeing now is this flywheel of these young artists that have gone viral on TikTok that have never played a show before. Some haven't even picked up a guitar. They'll sit, and try to figure out how to strum, but they're young, good looking, whatever the algorithm is telling them. And they're just set up to go get famous really fast and to go on these tours because in the heels of it, they're thinking if they were famous on TikTok, they're going to sell tickets in an arena. But a lot of times you're seeing these young kids just are not prepared to deliver a performance that's up to the standard and the caliber of a $50 ticket. So maybe they're set up to fail. So is a label as important as it used to be? It can be dramatically effective in the case of Jackson Dean, where you're ready for it. You truly are ready for the spotlight and for that moment and can capture it and do something with it. In the case of a lot of these kids on TikTok, maybe a label's not the right thing for them, where they should continue to develop their craft. And, not to go on a rant about that, but it's a great question. What I tell people all the time in this industry is you have to have a very clear definition of what your success looks like. For me, being where I am, if I can continue to stay in the game, to write songs, to play, the events that we choose to play, like yours and do weddings like that and have a great weekend with people that we really care about. That to me is the most important thing. 10 years ago, it was probably to go blow up and be on the festival stages and do that circuit. But, if you can look yourself in the mirror, if you have kids, I want to be home at night. That's my goal. If you can define very clearly what your version of success is in this industry, you can go chase it and achieve it without a label, without question.
Yeah. Addressing the cars part of cars and culture, and you and I have talked about this a little bit. The automotive presence throughout music And I chatted with Kathleen Edwards, Canadian singer-songwriter, Ed Robertson of the Bare Naked Ladies. I mentioned Brett as well. What's your version of how the passion around automotive permeates through music and makes, it is the soundtrack to the soundtracks that play in our car?
Yeah, you're right. It's kind of interesting because obviously being in country music, like the word truck has to be in every song that you write. Lose your Nashville card. Um, all kidding aside, what's cool for me and the connection, I knew we were going to talk about this, and it finally hit me. I can never say yes to a final version of a song that we are writing and producing until I hear it in my truck. A lot of times, it takes one or two cars to hear it in to just understand how it's going to be consumed by the end user. So I'll listen to it in my truck and then maybe Dustin's car to just get a sense of how does it sound, because that is the final litmus test for me. It never passes go until we listen to it in at least one, if not two different cars.
Hmm.
So
That's interesting.
from a culture perspective, I would imagine most artists do the same thing because they want to be alone, hand on the wheel, foot on the pedal, listening and consuming that as if the consumer's listening. So I don't know what percentage that nets out to, but I imagine it's very high that that's the final test for most artists is listening with their hand on the wheel.
You've opened for Cody Johnson last year, and one of his songs, Come On Cowgirl, has lyrics about a young girl who's too young to drive.
Young to drive, that's right. Yep.
He also talks about in the song Till You Can't about the right place to park it. It does permeate, doesn't it, Matt? It's everywhere, car culture. It's symbolic of so many things that are America, frankly.
It's when done the right way, I think every songwriter is chasing three or four different types of songs. The one is the freedom song, and that's the big one. If you can nail the freedom song, Fast Cars and Freedom, Rascal Flatts, I mean, the
Yep.
list goes on. The freedom song is the one that gives you the most, it gives you the most, to use another metaphor, highway from a writer's perspective to write. I mean, when you're writing freedom songs, it's 8 lanes and it opens up like this. When you're writing breakup songs, it's more like this. When you're writing sort of the freedom song could be about anything, fun night out, leaving town, chasing a dream, it could be anything. But the visual there is always feet on the dash, playing on the radio, windows down, sun coming in, view of either the beach or the mountains or the sunset. That opens up everything. And you're always in a car. You are always in a car or a truck, 100% of the time.
You opened for Ashley McBride too. She was part of that Cody Johnson tour, and she's got song "Home Sweet Highway." She's got references to in her song "What If We Don't." This is the part we call it a night. You get in your car, I get into mine. I mean, it's all over the place, Matt.
It is, and even in a song of hers that's my favorite called "Girl Going Nowhere," it's she weaves a lot of that in and out of the metaphors of like leaving town and physically not going anywhere with your life, but also, you know, not able to achieve a dream, which starts by setting out on the highway on four wheels. So
Yeah.
it's everywhere in the imagery of, especially in country music for sure.
We're on business radio. Let's talk a little bit about your business. You've been in a whole bunch of different ventures, and in fact, just moved into a new position at LB Capital. So you're not just a pretty face and a good voice, but you're also involved in some pretty high stakes business too. Tell me what you're up to.
Yeah, I appreciate the pretty face compliment. It's a lot of keels and a lot of filters on this call. But, no, look, I've always been an entrepreneur for the better part of my life, like kind of weaved in and out of a lot of different ventures, a lot of different relationships, and being in the industry that I'm in, as a performer, I also do a lot of like MC work for conferences and just kind of keynote speaking and things. It's lent to a lot of different relationships, and one of which actually is with one of my mentors. His name's Lance Bachman. Look him up. He's a powerhouse in the home service industry, built over $100 million portfolio. And he runs a roofing conference down in Marco Island every year, which I performed at and emceed. And he's got his hand in a lot of things. He's an entrepreneur, a venture capitalist as well. And he asked me to come be a partner and run the marketing and growth for his firm. So it's something I love to do. I love the focus, the drive, and the execution side of the business where, we're really helping people grow their business. I can learn a ton and then, you know, kind of shift that back to the music industry. So it really feeds me in a lot of different ways, and keeps me busy during the day. So
You've also had your hand in and watched some growth in the AI side, haven't you?
yeah,
How's AI changing business culture?
man,
Big question.
I don't even know where to begin. It's the most rapid rate of change among probably anything in the history of mankind. If you look at in the last
Hmm.
3 years, how fast it's evolved and what it can be a huge threat to those that are either unprepared or unwilling to embrace the change. It could also be an unbelievable asset to you if you are willing to embrace that, because now you're looking at how much faster you can scale if you replace. It's not always welcomed comment, but if you were able to replace humans with technology in certain cases, you could probably scale a lot faster by reallocating a lot of those funds towards technology versus paying people. That's the reality of what it does. So, like it or not, that's where we're headed. In a lot of cases, it can be really effective where humans are working with AI and technology to achieve a better result. So, it doesn't always have to be replacing it. I came from where it was most effective in the customer support industry for the past few years. Um, but how fast it's being built and adopted by customers right now is like nothing I've ever seen.
Is it changing the music industry? I mean, if I want to write a song, right, that has country lyrics, automotive, cars, trucks, AI can probably produce that. ChatGPT can probably produce it in about a split second, right?
It's getting scary, man, how good some of these demos are. There's some that you wouldn't even know are not
Mm.
like actual humans singing a real song. But
Hmm.
it's funny. I'll get text messages now from people that aren't songwriters. They're just like throwing me a funny idea for some concept, and then they'll throw it into an AI platform and send me the MP3 of it. I'll be like, "Oh my God, I didn't know you could write." And they're like, "No, I didn't. I just threw it into AI." I'm like, "Oh my God, here we go."
A little harder to perform, though, Matt, honestly.
That's true. That is
I
true.
mean, performers will never go off stage with, in the place of AI, I hope.
Ugh, who knows, man? I don't know. Give it a couple years. I'm sure AI could outperform me any day, but we'll see about that.
You've done a lot of in your business life. You've had a lot of involvement with software, with direct to consumer brands. What have you learned over the course of the last decade about maybe how the consumer is changing?
You're asking some really good questions today, man.
We're not
All
sitting at a
right,
bar anymore.
no kidding. Um, so I can only give perspective on my own personal experience. We founded a direct-to-consumer golf shoe brand back in 2011 and had sold it to a private equity firm back in 2015. So during that process, it was easy to at that point build a brand on Shopify and scale it up. We did the basic playbook of social media, paid Facebook ads, paid Instagram ads when it was in its infancy. And we found a really cool, very niche customer base of about 10,000 people that, we really were able to build very deep relationships with. And I think one of the reasons we were successful there, every Friday afternoon, any orders that came through during the week, my co-founder and I would sit on the phone and call all of those people. So you think it was kind of, if I'm being honest, we were in our mid late 20s. It was kind of a bro golf brand. It was loafers that we turned into golf shoes. So think Sperry topsiders for golf. We knew there was a pretty finite pocket of guys and gals that would buy these shoes and buy into that culture. But having said that, we built it brick by brick. Every Friday afternoon from 12 to 5, we would sit and call all of the customers who had come in that week. And one by one, we would ask them, hey, this is Matt and Josh from Canoes. Just first of all, thanks for the order. Wanted to understand more about you. Where do you play? Where are you a member? Dream foursome, of you and three of your other buddies. If we could give you 30% off of their purchase and give you a discount code, would you feel comfortable inviting them in? So we built this community of people that we knew it was sort of a weird niche product, but we also knew that if they bought into the culture and us being a really close part of that, we were selling ourselves. And how unscalable that was at the time, we built, I think, the perfect customer base based on just human interaction and just being gritty. Um, so how that compares to today, I've been out of that world, but I would imagine that it's easier today with all the technology that's out there, but that really helped us out.
Yeah, I mean, the Amazon effect on everything, right? Has just changed everything as well, and the speed to consumer, how you have to transition quickly in dealing with today's consumer. I'm guessing all of those things have a role in the business relationship
Yeah.
that we're in now. Yeah.
No, for sure. Right now, it's also different because you look at TikTok shops and the distribution channel, same as music. You can go so direct to consumer and meet those people virtually. If you're not, we saw Gary Vaynerchuk, if you're familiar with him. I had introduced him at a conference back in December. The biggest thing he talked about was TikTok shops. And if you're not doing it today, start a channel, build a studio, get in front of your audience and find out who your people are and sell them anything. He had a TikTok shop running in the background that he showed us on stage that from his office, they were selling hats and bottles of wine and all this stuff. So there's no shortage of ways to build an audience, build a customer base, and sell stuff online right now. It's just a matter of the ideas are great, the execution's everything.
You do a lot of public speaking, a lot of stage work that's not just behind a guitar. What's the message that you try to tell business leaders who you're in front of? What are you trying to convey as a host, as an MC, as somebody who's leading a group? And maybe where do people make mistakes in that?
The biggest thing when I'm leading, emceeing or doing a keynote is my big mantra in those moments is connection is currency. So I think that money is not the only currency that we have. I think we have time and I think we have connections or relationships. They're the three versions of how we can spend what we have while we're here. And to me, I'm a very big believer that connections are the biggest form of currency that we have. When we no longer have our time here, you can't spend your money anymore. You can't spend the time, you can't spend these relationships, but I would rather leave my time here with a full bank of, connections than a full bank of the sum of the other two, if I'm being really honest with you. So that's kind of a big thing. The other component when we're doing kind of leadership and, startup training is when you really look at sort of setting a foundation for how to enter a new relationship. It could be a business partnership, a relationship, or anything else. Is that for me, there's three components to it. I want to learn, I want to earn, and I want to return. So a very clear-headed focus of even with you and I want to make sure that I can give back to you everything that you're able to give to me, maybe in a different way. I want to be able to learn from you. I want to be able to, in a business sense, there usually is a monetary exchange, especially if we're getting paid for our service. But more importantly, how can I return that favor in maybe a different way through a connection, through more time, through training, through anything. Um, so they're really the two core principles that at least I sort of live my life and my business life by. And maybe that's different, but I try to project that to others. And so far, it's been a pretty clear message. So
Back to music. You've got two EPs that you've completed. First full length album coming out mid-year this year.
Fingers crossed. I know I've been promising this for quite a while, and life keeps getting in the way. We are sitting on about 140 songs right now that are in various forms of done. So
Really?
yeah, it's been about a 10-year process to
The 10-year overnight sensation. It's the golden rule, Matt.
you know what's funny about that too? I mean, Nashville specifically advocates that it's a 10-year town, and it's been written about it.
Mm.
Meaning everyone thinks they're going to get their first condo, show up at a writer's round, everyone's going to fall in love with them, they're going to be famous. And if you ask the people that have been wildly successful, that was the first thing everyone said to me was, this is a 10-year town. If you don't have it in you to make sure that you commit from now for the next 10 years, there's a really good probability that you're not going to achieve the success that this industry has to offer. Um, I have an incredible friend and mentor of mine named Rob Snyder. And if you look up Rob Snyder, he is one of the elite songwriters in Nashville. He's actually also a Philly guy. And Rob was one of the guys, he wrote She Got the Best of Me for Luke Combs,
Hmm.
Front Door Famous on his most recent album, written a ton. And Rob was one of the first people that told me that. He was right place, right time, hosting a writer's round at I think it was at the Tin Roof on Demumbrian, if you're in Nashville. And Luke Combs walks into town for the first time, just right off, the bus, and just says, "Hey, I'm just here, new in town, just want to meet some people, want to do some co-writes." Had Luke on his writers round called Revival, and built a friendship. And basically, a good portion of Luke Combs' first record was written by Rob and Luke. So it took Rob, 5 or 6 years to build that thing, then 2 or 3 more years for Luke to get really successful. And now he's at, I think, year 10 or 11, where you look back and it's like, that was my 10-year town experience. But it takes a long time.
Funny moment that occurred, I think, midway through last year. Uh, Lainey Wilson saw Reba McEntire backstage. I think maybe it was the CMAs or something, and Reba said to her, "Well, it sure is good to have you here. You're a great talent. Welcome to Nashville." And Lainey turned to her and said, "Well, I've been here for 10 years." It's exactly the rule. It's exactly the rule. All right. So for first full length mid-year, you're playing a couple of festivals coming up. We mentioned the Barefoot Country Music Festival and the Carolina Country Music Festival as well, right? I know your goal and ambition is keeping things in your music life and your home life solid. Well, what happens when you make it, Matt? How do you adjust for that?
Jason, if I'm being honest with you, I don't mean to sound corny about this in any kind of way. I have wildly exceeded any expectation that I had of my music career. And I mean that so sincerely. It's been an evolution. If you would have asked me 10 years ago where I wanted to be, I would have looked you right in the eye and said, you know, the level of, Brett and Brantley and all these other guys, I can very truthfully sit here in front of you and tell you, if I'm able to play the shows that I feel comfortable playing and get home to my kids at night, there's nothing more than I can ask for. I don't care where the stage is. I love it too much to, have other ambitions other than where I'm at right now.
Yeah, amazing. What do you want to do in your business life?
Excuse me. Um, that's a different story. I'm more competitive on the business side, but to me, it's the people I look up to. Maybe the person I look up to the most is a guy named Alex Hormozy, and he has a podcast called The Game. He's written some incredible books. He's an incredible business talking head, but he's a guy who's actually done it and put his own money towards things. And he has a podcast called The Game, and that frame of reference in business for me is it's grounding and humbling, but I'm a competitive person, former athlete. Entrepreneurship and being in that space with that frame of mind, knowing that you're just playing a game, you're trying to figure out the rules, you're trying to, build an edge, be competitive. I just love being in it. So where I'm at today is a lot of fun working with Lance and the LB Capital team. 5 years from now, if we're really successful and we're growing, then so be it. I have music as my creative outlet that, I'm still able to pursue that as, a second full-time career, if you will. But business wise, I want to be competitive and I love to learn. The more I learn, the more that I'm able to sort of take that education and apply it to all different types of things, marketing, digital courses, whatever it is. But um, I'm loving, all sides of my brain firing at all times is the goal.
We've had you on for almost 40 minutes. Didn't even ask you if you were a car guy.
You know what? In my heart, I, I aspire to be more of a car guy than I have been, but the grounded 3 kids under 8 years old in me right now doesn't really the phase of life I'm in really doesn't provide me with the extra space in a garage for a nice car. But just being down at at the Chica Lodge and looking around the parking lot was pretty inspiring and a quick reminder that well, I could get back into this.
Yeah. You can find out more of Matt Freedman and the Herd, Philadelphia's finest, I guess you could say, mattfriedmanmusic.com. And you'll see his tour schedule where he's going to end up this summer, and I'm sure we'll see you on the road somewhere. But Matt, thank you so much for being on Cars and Culture. Thanks for explaining the business side of music, the cultural side of so many things that you're involved in, and an absolute pleasure to be with you.
Jason, I can't thank you enough for having me. And to all the listeners out there that are listening to you and subscribing to you personally and your stuff, there is no better human in this industry that's doing what he's doing than Jason Stein. So thank you, brother. Appreciate it.
Well, I'm glad we had a recording for that. Thank you, Matt.
Sir.
I learned to play guitar because in junior high at Calvary Chapel, the only thing that girls were more interested in than sports were guys that played guitar and led worship. So I started learning to play guitar so I could lead worship. And, that was something that it never felt like a thing. It just felt like something that kids do in a Christian school. So when I went away to college to play sports, I didn't even bring my guitar to college. I didn't have it there. When I got hurt, I was pretty depressed. I think that's the right word. I think I was like suffering from depression. And so when I came home to have surgery in Southern California, I went back to Fresno. When I went back, I don't know what the decision was to bring the guitar with me, but I grabbed it and I brought it back with me. And it ended up being the thing that I leaned on to kind of get through that stage. We would go park up at the lake, Lake Millerton in Fresno, and sit in the bed of the truck and, drink beers and play Dave Matthews Band songs. And all of a sudden it wasn't worship. It was just music, And so when I moved back to Southern California, I had this one night where a bunch of friends had gone out to the bars in Newport Beach, and we ended up at, they close at 1:30 and we weren't ready to shut it down yet. So I'll never forget, I was sitting on one of those like inflatable exercise balls playing a mini guitar at a friend's house. And it's 2:33 in the morning. And a girl that I randomly went to high school with was there, and she goes, you have to do this. Like, you can't just make this the thing you do at 3:00 in the morning. Like, this is stupid. You have to pursue this. She goes, I'm a makeup artist in Hollywood. I'm working with the Pussycat Dolls right now, but a lot of other artists, I have access to people. You need to come up to LA and you need to take a shot at this thing. And even though I did move to LA, I took her on her word and I moved to LA, but nothing happened in those 10 years. But the reaction I got from people is what made me realize I could probably do this. I could walk into a restaurant or a bar with my guitar and say, can I talk to your manager? I want a gig here, and play for them. And I never got turned down. So that's where the confidence started building, and be like, I'll tell me your worst night of the week and I'll bring you a crowd on a Tuesday night. That's how Sonoma Wine Garden in Santa Monica started. And so the confidence was built by first asserting myself, putting myself out there, but never being told no, And so when I moved to Nashville, I felt like I was too old to be the artist anymore. I was already in my early 30s and nothing had happened. So I moved to Nashville to write songs for other people. And the second that I started pitching the demos, it was, who's the demo singer?
Huh.
And within a year in Nashville, I'm getting meetings because I'm singing the demo on these the vocal on these demos. So it was, it took one person to say, you should do this, for me to go, all right, that's what I've done my whole life. If I feel confident, if you give me confidence in something, and Jeremy knows better than anybody, if I feel confident, I'll win an argument when I know I'm wrong, So it's the music thing was like, who's the demo singer? And I was like, all right, let's take a meeting. So right. it was an interesting path, and it took, 10, 11 years, but I feel like I'm where I'm supposed to be.
So who is the demo singer? Questions answered. Who was the girl who told you to go do that?
My friend Carlene, who's still crushing it doing makeup in Los Angeles, was a girl that was a year older than me at my high school. And the apartment complex when I moved back from Fresno to Newport Beach, she wasn't living there. Another girl from my high school was living there, and we were all at the pool one day, and I saw her walking. I was like, Carlene? She was like, I thought you were in Fresno. And it just sparked this, reunited a friendship basically. And she was so instrumental. I mean, my website, brettyoungmusic.com, she bought as a Christmas gift for me. Like, I have that domain because of her. Wow. So she was a huge champion for me at the very beginning. Probably, like I said, the reason that I had the confidence to go, all right, I can do it. Let's go.
Wow. Carlene. Thank you, Carlene. You're sitting in, and I'm going to get to the Cars here in a second and ask Jeremy something related to this, but you're sitting in LA and you decide to move to Nashville in your 30s. It had to be not exactly an insignificant decision to make, right, Brett? I mean, you're going to go halfway across the country, and you're not even going to be a singer. You're just going to write music for other people, which so many do.
Yeah. God, I mean, I don't really know how to explain how it made so much perfect sense to me, but it just did. I felt like I had beat my head against a wall in LA, and I was the lucky one in LA. Like, when I say I played bars and restaurants, I had 5 residencies a week. I was making a really good living playing 5 nights a week. Most of my friends were hustling to sell tickets to play at these little 100-person venues. I was getting paid by the restaurant. So, but it wasn't ideal. Anytime I tried to play one of my own songs, that was like the bathroom break or go get another drink. They wanted to hear covers. They wanted to hear songs that they knew. And so I finally that got old, And so I met an investor who ended up being best man at my wedding. I mean, we got close really fast. One of my gigs in LA was at the Montage in Beverly Hills. It's not the Montage anymore, but he was in town from Atlanta. And he just pulled me aside, and his question was like, what does it take to like take the next step? I said, well, I need to be writing more and do less of playing other people's songs. And he goes, what does that mean? And I said, money. And he said, all right. So I ended up sitting down with him and his wife, and they basically said, stop bartending during the day, keep your gigs at night, write during the day, and we'll fund it. We'll pay for it. And one of the things he really wanted to do, he had a really close friend that was working at a studio, ironically, here in Nashville, that is now where I make my records with Dan Huff, who's my producer. He was working as an engineer at that same studio. It's called Blackbird. And so I'll never forget, I got this crazy invite to go to Charles Barkley's Super Bowl party in Vegas. But I had to fly out that same night. So I go to the Super Bowl party, and then I go sleep on the floor in the Vegas airport, and I fly to Nashville, and I make this record with my investor, who's, like I said, now one of my best friends. And it was that experience with the songwriters and the musicians in Nashville, just that whole culture and community that made me realize I needed to go there more. And I thought that was going to be what happened. I would just go visit. But every time I visited, I felt like I was starting over with my relationships. And so once I realized that, I went, you know what? This is dumb. I mean, I'm either going to stop visiting or I'm going to move there. That's the only way that I'm going to tap into this community fully. And I talked to my then girlfriend, now wife, about it. And she basically was like throwing rocks at Lassie. She was like, get out of here, go, you got to go, get out of here. And it led to some hard times for her and I. We broke up a year after I got here. And we had 2 years apart, which I think we needed. So that was great. But it also allowed me to be like completely submerged in the Nashville songwriting community. And so while I was, writing these songs and singing on these demos and getting attention for being the singer on these demos, I was also really learning this community and realizing that this is where I needed to be. So I always say, if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. I had no idea it was going to go like this, but it's exactly how it was supposed to turn out.
And you were signed by Big Machine Label Group in August of 15, right? And then in February of 16, you released a 6-song self-titled EP. And Sleep Without You was released as the first single from that EP in April of 16. You were on your way.
Yeah, that was cool. It's such a weird thing to talk about the first single, because very few people get to have their first single go to number one. So I'm really grateful to that song. But that song didn't really change anything for me. It was the second single. In case you didn't know. Yeah. Off that record, that it was. I would say it changed my career, but it changed my life. We just found out that song is the 7th song ever in country music to get a Diamond Award, which means 10 times platinum. It was just, and every single summer when people start getting married again, Jeremy, sorry I didn't have that song yet for your wedding.
For Jeremy's wedding.
Yeah, we didn't have that one yet. But every year, like, even if there's a little dip in streaming and sales, every summer that song spikes back up on the charts and everything. So that one, it changed my whole life. So Sleep Without You, I'm grateful. It's a song about my parents. My dad could never sleep when my mom was away for like a women's retreat at the church. It was really cute, I thought. And so I had an idea to write that song. And it was my first number one, so I'm grateful to that song. But in case you didn't know, made my whole career.